Greetings and welcome back to Doctor Who Revisited, where I go through every single episode of Doctor Who from 1963 all the way to 2025 and review them. And now we are on to Earthshock. What an episode! I mean, obviously I've seen this episode several times before in the past, but it's been a while since I've seen it last time. So yeah, I'm now cautiously naming this episode my favorite Peter Davison episode, my favorite fifth Doctor episode so far. I mean, there's just so much to unpack with this one episode of 4 parts. I mean, starting off right from the beginning.
In the beginning,
The Doctor and Adric are having a bit of a fight because Adric is tired of being an outsider, as he calls it, and being ignored and being the joke, the punchline of the joke. And right off the bat, I mean, like, okay, I can see why Adric might feel that way, but this kinda comes out of nowhere. Like, looking at some of the previous episodes, yes, I guess maybe the Doctor hadn't given him as much attention as he gave Nissa or Tegan, but I don't know, maybe I missed something, but I've just recently rewatched all those episodes prior to this one. I didn't feel it. I mean, I think if the Doctor chooses to give one of the companions his attention, or chooses not to give any attention to a companion, it's kind of balanced equally across the board. I mean, therein lies some of the problems that the Fifth Doctor has. I mean, he is, at this point in the show's history, the youngest actor to take on the role. Obviously, I mean, it all changed once Matt Smith and Shruti Gatwa came along, but so far, I mean, 5 Doctors in, he's the youngest one, and arguably one can say so far he's the most immature Doctor of the bunch. Again, so far, when you compare it to the Doctors that came before him. And even Adric kind of says as much in the episode itself, that since his regeneration episode, he's become a bit immature. Now, obviously, it's all part of the infighting, and of course, Adric apologizes for it later, and so does the Doctor himself. But like, this Doctor has somewhat of a problem that some of the other Doctors didn't have, is that he's having a hard time convincing people of his intentions, and we see that in this episode a lot, especially later on the freighter, where it's like he's really struggling to get like the Beryl Reed character on his side. He's struggling to get Captain Lieutenant Scott, I believe the guy's name, the guy with the mustache. So he's really struggling to get his point across. Like the lieutenant like has him by the throat almost, pointing a gun at him, commanding him to tell him where he's hidden the bodies, and the guy just doesn't know what he's talking about. And it's kind of a similar thing happening on the ship, where they think that he killed the crew members. And like, yeah, this Doctor has a bit of problems. People just generally don't tend to take him as seriously as, say, the previous Doctors. And you can argue that even the Fourth Doctor had some of this problem, mainly because of the ridiculous outfit that he wore, but at least he had this commanding voice. Like, the Fourth Doctor had a commanding presence. The Fifth Doctor, not so much. I mean, he looks very childish. He looks like a kid. I mean, he's walking around with a salary on his lapel, for crying out loud. And he's got this youngish, squeaky voice sometimes. But this episode, out of all the other ones that came before it, I think is probably Peter Davison's best so far. And it's really the episode where this Doctor comes into his own. Like, this is the episode that cements Peter Davison as the Doctor. This is the moment. This is where you look at this guy and say, "Yep, that's the Doctor," and you really feel that in Peter Davison's performance, from the smaller stuff like like this doctor saying his somewhat of a catchphrase when he says "Braveheart" to Tegan. He's gonna say that a lot to Tegan. I mean, he even says that when he came back in The Power of the Doctor. That just tells you how much that line is important to this doctor, and it goes all the way to having enough maturity to apologize to Adric for the way he spoke to him. And I really do love that scene of them in the TARDIS, both apologizing to each other, and the Doctor realizing that Adric could theoretically go back into E-space if he wanted to. And of course, knowing the Doctor and knowing what we know today about the Doctor's lore, the Doctor didn't really throw a tantrum just because he didn't want to go back into E-space. He just doesn't want to lose his friend, and that's why the Doctor and even all the other Doctors previously have always been this estranged to losing companions. Even going all the way back to the emotional speech that the first Doctor gave when he had to say goodbye to Susan. Like, the Doctor does not do goodbyes. He doesn't like endings, as River Song says. Yeah, the Doctor just really does not want to lose his friends. Like, he couldn't even look at Leela in the eye when she said she wanted to stay on Gallifrey, and he kind of did the same thing for Romana when she decided to stay behind in E-space. So, like, that's just the thing that all the Doctors share, is having to say goodbye to a companion. And boy, did he ever had to say goodbye to Adric in this episode. I mean, right from the start, from the beginning.
In the beginning.
This episode kind of sets up Adric leaving, even though I feel like his decision to leave kind of comes out of nowhere, and I suppose it's kind of a momentary fit. I do think that it sets up beautifully his departure from the show. And I did also really like the scene in the TARDIS. Again, I love it when they show other rooms in the TARDIS, and we see Adric's room with all these funny little knickknacks, and he's got like the mask of the android from the Visitation. He's got like the double helix thing from Kinda, which kind of begs the question, like, when did he have time to pick those up and bring them with him? Like, don't the Kinda people need that thing? Anyways, none of this matters. It's all just Easter eggs and funny little reminders of previous episodes, and it's something that I do appreciate, that this new approach to Doctor Who under the leadership of John Nathan Turner does, is referencing previous episodes. So I appreciate that a lot. Now, again, this episode heavily focuses on the Doctor and Adric. Like, even though the Doctor even though Adric stays behind on the TARDIS while the Doctor and Nissan Tegan go out and explore that cave, he's the one that actually comes back and saves the day. He throws that rock into the android's face, which technically does nothing, but it distracts the android long enough for the other people to shoot it to death. And like, even on that massive freighter, it's really the Doctor and Adric doing all the corridor exercise for the majority of the episode, while Nissa and Tegan just stay behind on the TARDIS. I didn't really much like that. Like, Nissa and Tegan are great characters, great companions. I don't understand why them, and not only them, but just like the whole expedition group just stays behind on the TARDIS while the Doctor and Adric go and explore the freighter. But I did really appreciate that Tegan actually decides to join the expedition and go and try and find the Doctor and Adric. And she even takes the overall war by that other character, even though they're completely different sizes. But somehow the overalls just fit her, I suppose. I guess maybe it's a one size fits all. But yeah, here's something that I think will be important later on. Like, we all know Tegan can get a bit aggressive at times, and at some points of the episode, I mean, she rushes into an area where she just rushes into a couple of Cybermen. Granted, they've just been shot on the floor, but she rushes in and grabs one of their guns and kills a Cyberman. Which, if you know anything about Tegan's character, that's kind of why she left the Doctor in Resurrection of the Daleks. She's just gets tired of seeing people die. And then when she comes back in Power of the Doctor, she just picks up weapons and starts shooting Cybermen all over again. So, like, make up your mind, Tegan. But I guess, Resurrection of the Daleks was just a really bad day for Tegan. And that's why she decided to leave just out of nowhere. Maybe it'll make much more sense once I reach that episode again, but that's just, a thought that I had. But I don't know if I've mentioned this already, but Nyssa is by far my favorite Fifth Doctor companion. Like, out of all companions, and I'm including audio companions and comic book companions, Nyssa is by far my favorite of the Fifth Doctor, which really does upset me that she just stays behind on the TARDIS. Adric is with the Doctor. Tegan goes out to save and fight some Cybermen, and Tegan and Nissa's just there, not doing much. But I do love that there's that moment where that woman that Tegan stole her clothes or whatever is shot by a Cyberman trying to save them all, and Nyssa has this emotional moment, emotional breakdown, seeing her corpse lying on the ground on the floor of the TARDIS. That's really a nice character moment for Nyssa, I guess, in this episode, which unfortunately she doesn't get a lot in this one. So that kind of sucks for a Nyssa fan such as myself. But talking about some of the ancillary characters, I suppose, like, this episode has a lot of red shirts, like a lot of rando people who are just there to die. They're just there as cannon fodder for the Cyberman. And, like, speaking of which, like, when they're on that Earth expedition into the caves, there's that one guy that stays behind to monitor everything and keeping the lieutenant, whatever way you want to call it, he's keeping him updated on all the people that are dying. And when all of them just walk into the TARDIS and go into the freighter, they just leave him there. Like, they forget he even exists. Like, what the hell? I just thought that was funny. And I realized that about halfway through part 2, I'm like, wait a minute. They just left that guy on Earth and just didn't even tell him where they were going. So, yeah, I think that's a bit funny. I suppose, I don't necessarily call it a plot hole because they weren't really planning to go into outer space at the time, but, like, I just think it's funny that the guy is just sitting there looking at the scanner, probably yelling his heart out into the communicator and maybe even asking for an expedition to find the expedition that was sent to rescue the other expedition, while all of them are out finding Cybermen in space. I think that's kind of a funny a funny oversight from Eric Sayward. And by the way, Eric Sayward, I think he hit this one out of the park as far as a Cyberman story. And oh yes, this is a Cyberman story. I don't know if I mentioned this, because the Cyberman stories, especially in classic Doctor Who, where they differ from a lot of the Dalek stories, I would say, is that they don't always give away the plot that it's a Cyberman story. Like, most Dalek stories, not all of them, but most of them have the word Dalek in the title. So, I mean, right from the start, the Daleks, or the Dalek invasion of Earth, Genesis of the Daleks, Planet of the Daleks, Day of the Daleks. Even going into the modern series, you have Daleks in Manhattan, or Evolution of the Daleks, Victory of the Daleks, Into the Dalek. Dalek! Like, the Daleks' names are plastered all over their episodes. And yes, the Cybermen do that at times. Like, you have Tomb of the Cybermen, Revenge of the Cybermen, Attack of the Cybermen, and whatnot. Even in the modern series as well, like Rise of the Cybermen, Ascension of the Cybermen, which technically is the same thing, but who cares? So yeah, at times they do that, but for the most part, you don't know it's a Cybermen episode until you see the Cybermen there. I mean, from the very beginning,
Ini the beginning.
the 10th planet, or the moon base, going further into history, like Silver Nemesis. I suppose that's a bit of a giveaway. But like in the modern series, you also have Army of Ghosts and Doomsday. Or how about World Enough in Time in the Doctor Falls? Even though technically in the Doctor Falls you already know that the Cybermen are involved, but that's beside the point. So yeah, at times you do have you do have like a regular random name for an episode, and then the Cybermen show up. And like the Cybermen in this episode, they just show up right at the very end, and that's the cliffhanger for part one. And I love that. I absolutely love that. You don't know who the Doctor is fighting. I mean, the Doctor is basically fighting shadows for the majority of the first part. Like they're fighting these shadowy androids. We don't really know much about them until you discover that they were actually Cyberman androids. I mean, like somehow the androids are even more terrifying than the Cybermen themselves. I mean, they're practically indestructible. Did I just invent a word, indestructible? Maybe, but like it took the combined forces of multiple guns on one single weak point to take one of them out. Even then, it's just to stun him for a bit. While the Cybermen seem to be dropping like flies, and more to the point, the androids' weapons, which are way more effective. It's like in the palm of their hand. They don't have to carry a big heavy gun around that can be stolen by somebody, snatched away by a random human. And even when it fires, it doesn't just kill the person; it just liquidates them completely. Like they turn into mush, as we've seen in part one of this serial. So yeah, the androids are a much scarier villain than the actual Cybermen. Which, by the way, I absolutely love this Cyberman design. I mean, I love most Cyberman design. I mean, I really do not like the Revenge of the Cybermen design from the last time the Cybermen showed up all the way back in 1975. So that's like, what, 6 seasons ago? Yeesh, time flies. But like, I do not like that design much because it's basically like the Invasion design, but worse in a way. But this design, oh my goodness, I absolutely love it. And like, this looks menacing and terrifying. And yes, it looks incredibly dated by today's standards, especially with the look that you associate modern Cybermen with. But like, I think for its time as a product of the 80s, this looks amazing as a Cyberman design, and it's so successful that they continued it on for the rest of the Cyberman stories in the classic series, and even in the modern series, especially more recently with the Jodie Whittaker era, they kind of brought that design back, sort of. They sort of modernized it, they updated it, but like, this design is stellar, and the voices they got for the Cybermen is incredible. I love it. I personally call them smug Cybermen or smugmen because, I mean, just how the cyber leader talks. I mean, like, he's always way too overconfident and sure of himself, more so than most other Cybermen stories. And like, I think the voice really does carry a lot. And it's not just the voice, but like the way he speaks of like, "So, Doctor, we meet again. My army awaits. Your technology is primitive. There will be no mistakes." I mean, that just sounds like the quintessential British arrogance. Apologies to any British viewers who might be watching this, but like, this is like I'm struggling to find the words. Like, the highest of British superiority and self-importance in Cyberman form, and I absolutely love it. And I just think and learning more about the behind the scenes of the episode, because fun fact, they actually brought back the two actors who played the Cyber Leader and the Cyber Lieutenant. They brought them back on Big Finish to reprise their roles as Cybermen. Obviously not the same Cybermen, but like a Cyber Leader and a Cyber Trooper. And like, they, in the behind the scenes, they do tell an interesting story about how no one really knew who was talking when they were on set, so they just had to constantly move around so that they knew which of the Cybermen was actually the one speaking. That was a lot of fun, and watching it in this episode just made me laugh like a lot. But yeah, I do love the way that I just love everything about the Cybermen in this episode, minus the fact that the whole "my army awaits" moment is kind of pointless because you don't really see the army of, like, there's a massive Cybermen army and they don't really do much in part 4. Like, that's really literally the cliffhanger of episode 3. In episode 4 they don't really do a lot, and I just think it's so funny that the scenes showing the army of Cybermen walking around the freighter is just a rehash of the previous scene with the cyber leader walking around with his escort. They show it again from different angles, and like you can clearly see that the one leading them is a cyber leader because he got the black handlebars, but they just hope no one would notice. And it's funny, and like the scene of the Cybermen ripping off the nylon coverings or whatever. It's a cool scene, badass Cyberman moment, but like, and then they show it again to try to trick the audience into thinking that there's multiple Cybermen, and it's really just the same one, just taking off the same thing again. So yeah, these kinds of film trickery, when you see it, it's kind of funny. And like at the end, where they show the same shot, multiplied 3 times, so it looks like a larger army than it actually is. Yeah, that was funny. It's one of those things that when you notice it, it's funny, but it serves a purpose in the scene. So you kind of let it slide a bit, I guess. But yes, once the Cybermen show up, it really does forces the Doctor to step up his game, and that's why I said that this is I think Peter Davison's best performance as the Doctor so far. I just really like this, how his whole attitude changes once the Cybermen show up. Once he realizes the size of the threat, so to speak, that we ain't dealing with some random alien slob or whatever. It's the Cybermen's, and like it's like at the very tail end of the Cyber Wars, which is a whole topic in and of itself, which I wish Doctor Who would explore a bit more on the TV side. We only get to see snippets of it. It's a much bigger deal in expanded Doctor Who lore. But I do think the reasoning for the Cybermen to trying to blow up the Earth or crash the freighter into the Earth, I think it's a very solid reasoning for the Cybermen, because, like, yeah, the Cybermen want to blow up the Earth. Why? There's got to be a motive behind it, and I do think it's a very good motive. I do, however, think that the freighter traveling back in time to the time of the death of the dinosaurs, that feels a little forced, in my opinion. Like, there was no reason for that to happen. And like, so just because some cyber technology was attached to the guiding system of the ship can suddenly time travel? What? How does that work? And even Adric is like, no, it makes sense. No, it does not. It doesn't make sense. Not at all. So yeah, I think they were just, Eric Saywood really just wanted to tie it all up in a nice, neat little bow, possibly even a bow tie.
Bow ties are cool.
To kind of lead the whole episode back to the start of the episode where they were talking about the dinosaurs. So okay, you wanted it to come full circle. I just think the reasoning for why the ship traveled back in time is nonsense. Like, if you only just written some kind of other plot device of like the ship somehow was connected to the TARDIS, and it was like the TARDIS dragging the ship into a crash on Earth, and because of all the shenanigans that took place in the console room, the TARDIS suddenly traveled back in time and dragged the ship with it by accident, that would have made a lot more sense than just to say, oh, because they attached the cyber technology to the ship can time travel now all of a sudden. Just feels like they made time travel a little too convenient and a little too easy to achieve. But I mean, none of this really matters because it all leads back to the final ending of the episode, the destruction of the dinosaurs, and slightly more importantly, the death of Adric. And I did say from the beginning
In the beginning.
that this episode, right from the start, it sets up Adric's departure. And even though I think his death could have been avoided, I do love how his final conversation with the Doctor and Tegan went by. Like, in that scene, like, you just know from the way they set it up, and I think from the way they acted, I think as much criticism, rightfully so, that I think Matthew Waterhouse got for portraying the role of Adric, I think at least in that scene, his goodbye scene to Tegan and the Doctor, I think he really stepped it up, and I really do think it was a beautiful moment of him saying to Tegan, "Goodbye, Tegan. I'll see you soon," and like the Doctor shaking his hand, saying, "Good luck, Adric." So yeah, I really do think they set up his departure from the show, not necessarily from life just yet, because by this point the actors knew that Matthew Waterhouse was leaving, but the characters kind of didn't know that. So I do really think that they set it up beautifully that he's leaving, and it would have been a great ending to the character if not for the fact that he could have easily avoided it by just staying in the goddamn escape pod and not trying to prove himself by stepping out of it to die on the ship when it exploded. Like, he could have gone off safely. He could have rejoined the TARDIS crew from that escape pod, because we do see them kind of saying goodbye to the people in the next episode. But he was just so convinced that he got the calculations right that he just forced himself to leave the escape pod and try to steer the ship away from the Earth. And that's the thing. They practically dragged him by the arm into the escape pod to try and save his life. But when he sprints out of the escape pod, none of them tries to stop him. What the hell? And like, he didn't die because he tried to save the Earth. He died because he was so desperate to prove he was right that he knew the final combination for the logic puzzle, which he didn't. Like, he steps outside of the escape pod going, of course. And it's like, okay, so he knows the answer, and then he struggles to get the answer again. So like, why the hell did you step out of the escape pod? Only to be just, killed because a Cyberman shot the control console. And I do love that the Cyberman just forced himself to stay alive just to sabotage Adric's victory. And then just drop dead. So I do love that part of this moment. But then, like, Adric is like, and now I never know if I was right. And that's what was most important to him. Being right, not saving the planet. No, of course, obviously. He wasn't to know that the ship was supposed to crash into the Earth. He didn't know that. So he genuinely was trying to save the Earth. But then, even when everybody told him to get off, he still refused to do so because he thought he had the right equations done. Turns out he didn't, and he's never even going to know if he was right or wrong about those calculations. And that just sums up Adric's character to a T. But I do love that right by the end, he's clutching that rope thing that used to belong to his brother. I did say that in his debut episode, that like everything about his attire tells a story about the character, and even like the star on his like the star with the badge of the mathematical excellence. The Doctor uses it to kill the cyber leader, so he didn't actually contribute to some capacity in this episode. But yeah, and that final shot, this for the final moment of the credits rolling, no music, no sound whatsoever, and it's just on the backdrop of Adric's broken star on a black background. I think it's a beautiful send off to a not so popular character. Let's be honest. I mean, I sometimes can compare him to the Jason Todd of the Doctor Who universe, because like, yeah, Jason Todd, very unpopular Robin that the fans literally voted him off. I think I vaguely remember something about the fans wanting Adric to die, and that's kind of what they did it. I don't know if it's true or not. I think it's like one of those famous Doctor Who myths. I should probably look into that a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, Adric is kind of the Jason Todd of the Doctor Who universe. Who would have figured? One final point, I've got to bring up. Well, two final points, I guess. First of all, like, guns can be fired in the TARDIS now. No more of that state of temporal grace nonsense from the Hand of Fear. But then secondly, like, the Doctor very casually picks up a gun and shoots the Cyberman, the Cyber leader, multiple times. So for everyone that keeps hammering the point home that the Doctor is a pacifist, the Doctor is opposed to guns, even the Doctor himself says it at times, no, he is not. Like, the Doctor will pick up a gun and shoot to kill when necessary. I didn't even have time to talk about this in my review for The Visitation, but like, he seems very familiar with the revolver that he used to open the door. Now, yes, he only shot to open the door in that episode, and he's like, I never miss. So yeah, clearly the Doctor has some familiarity with guns, especially human-made guns. And like, I mean, he did kind of build a gun and shoot a Sontaran out of existence in the Invasion of Time, but I mean, technically he doesn't even remember doing it, so it doesn't even count. Yes, it does. But yeah, more on that in later episodes. There's another episode that deals very heavily with the Doctor handling guns, but we'll get to that when we get to that. But the final point that I wanted to bring up, when the ship blows up, and yes, for this ship I watched, the newer remastered version where they actually had the shot of the Earth and like the ship crashing into the Earth, as opposed to what the original broadcast version had of just the freighter itself exploding. But yeah, it's some bit of a minor nitpick, but it's something I feel like I gotta bring up, because where the ship actually crashed wasn't the original, like where the meteor that killed the dinosaurs actually hit. Like, you see it crash to somewhere around North Africa to somewhere Middle East ish. And again, I do love that they actually kept the Earth the way it looked back then. But for the most part, they got the location of where the ship crashed wrong, because from all accounts, from what we know of the meteor that actually killed the dinosaurs, which, by the way, that whole detail about how the dinosaurs actually died, yeah, a lot of it is historically inaccurate, but I mean, that's kind of the information that they had at the time. Like, at the time, they even mentioned that the dinosaurs were all cold-blooded, and that's why they all died of hypothermia. The dinosaurs were mostly warm-blooded. Like, yeah, some were actually cold-blooded, but for the most part, most dinosaurs were warm-blooded because they are not reptiles, they are birds. But that's beside the point. But yeah, that's a bit of information that they didn't know when they wrote the episode. But when they remastered the episode and added that visual of the ship crashing into Earth, they already knew by that point where the meteor landed, and it was in the Gulf of Mexico. And yes, I am calling it the Gulf of Mexico. Deal with it. But that's where the meteor crashed, not where the episode shows it. But I digress. But yes, we already said goodbye to the Sonic Screwdriver in the season, and now we are saying goodbye to Adric. And I do genuinely love, I do think that Janet Fielding and Sarah Sutton and Peter Davison really acted their hearts out in that scene where they see Adric dying. I mean, the look on Peter Davison's face, knowing that he just lost his friend, really just, it hits home for me. And even Tegan, who, let's be honest, didn't really get along with Adric for the most part. A lot of the time, she couldn't stand him. She breaks down and cries on Nissa's shoulder. And I mean, oh my goodness, Nissa. Like, she lost her father, and then she lost her whole planet. And now she loses a friend. Like, how much more can this poor woman take? But yeah, really a tragic ending to, like I said, not a very popular character, but I think at least that part of the story was very well executed, and I actually really liked it. So yeah, I think this is probably my longest review of a Doctor Who episode so far, and oh boy, it's not even the season finale. We've got so much more to talk about, but that, of course, is a story for another time. Let me know what you think about this episode. I like it a lot, minus a couple of plot holes and inconsistencies. I think this is the best Peter Davison episode thus far, upon revisiting and rewatching it, of course. But yeah, we've got the finale coming up and next time, so I'll see you then. Goodbye for now, everybody, and remember, Braveheart. Hello again. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and leave a comment. See you next time.